Good morning, everyone. At this time, we'll call the St. Croix County Board of Supervisors to order. And at this time, we'll have an invocation by Pastor Randy Simpson of Harvest Time Church in Hudson. Everybody rise, please.
Thank you very much. It's an honor to be here this morning and to lead in prayer. And as somebody that worked for 20 years for a county, actually more than 20 years at 2 counties, and as a sheriff's deputy, I really appreciate what you do and what your people do. And sitting next to the chief deputy here for a moment brought me back, and I appreciate what happens in the county at all levels and at this level and everything from here down, and how important it is for you to gather and to discuss things. And so I just want to pray and ask God to give us peace and give us wisdom for this time. And if you would join me. Heavenly Father, we do thank you for this day. We thank you. This is a day that you have made, and we rejoice and we're glad. And Lord, I pray that this group could have a heart of understanding and peaceful thoughts and thinking, and that they would operate out of a mercy that comes from you, and that they would operate out of a love for their fellow man and women and all people. And we just thank you, God, for your peace to be present in their meeting. We ask for peace. We ask for wisdom. Well, we know that wisdom is the principal thing. We know that wisdom from you is better than gold and better than silver. And so I ask for wisdom for each person here, for each individual, and for the group to make decisions, to do justly, and to love righteousness, and to seek peace and pursue it. So we thank you for each one here. We speak a blessing over them and their families, their homes. We speak peace. And we thank you for these people that are giving themselves and their time, Lord, to make important decisions. And we ask for your wisdom, your knowledge, and your understanding. And we bless them in Jesus' name. Amen. Thank you. God bless you.
Stay standing, and everybody follow me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We'll have roll call now.
There's an infomercial about that.
We're missing one supervisor, and Travis Schochner is excused, so thank you, everyone. At this time, we're open for public comment for items on or off the agenda. Does anybody?
Morning, Mr. Chairman.
Good morning.
Members of the County Board. My name is Alan Burchill, and I'm the mayor of Hudson for another month and a half, so you won't have to put up with me after that. I'm coming today to request that you make a decision on the library, on the funding of our library. We've had staffing issues. We've reopened our library based on the fact that the city of Hudson in the fall put in another $40,000 from our reserve account. With that amount and the other $12,000, we put a 17% increase in our funding for our library. We requested the other municipalities to help, and they weren't able to. But we thought it was important to do that. So we increased funding by 17%, or probably $55,000 over the previous year. The other 3 years, we went up 5%, 3%, and 3%, higher than any other department in our city. Last week, I got a call from our city administrator saying that we received our check from the county for 70%. And I thought the meeting was today to make that decision. And I did call Administrator Thompson, and he gave me the answer of how it happened. But I think I think you need to vote up or down, whether or not we should get the money or not. Our library is moving in the right direction. We're trying our best to fund the library as fast as we can. All of those, and you guys have to deal with levy limits too, but those of you who have been in government, local government, know how tough it is for levy limits. And that was part of the reason why we got behind. And we're trying to make it up. But I would request that you give us the 100% so that we can stay open on Monday, so we don't put pressure on the other libraries. I would hate to see us lose our Monday opening again, because I think it's working well, and hopefully it's a good thing for our other libraries within the county. And thank you very much for your time. One other comment, Tim Ramberg, I don't think is here, but the highway department, you guys do a great job. I drive up to Polk County almost every weekend, and I tell you, our roads in St. Croix County are fabulous, so good job. Thank you.
Thank you. Still open for public comment. Yes, Jeff.
Hi, my name is Jeff Johnson. I'm the chairman for the town of Hudson, and I'm here to speak on that library funding issue also. I just wanted to set the record straight. I'd heard a report of a meeting you guys had a while back, and the figures were bandied around that there hadn't been any increases to the Hudson Joint Library, and we were underfunding it. And we're in the same position you guys are with levy limits, but in 2000, that was incorrect information you were given. In 2014, Town of Hudson increased its funding of the library by 5%. In 2015, we increased it by 3%. In 2016, we increased it by 2%. So we've increased our library funding 10% in the last few years, trying to get the hours back up to where we wanted them. I don't understand how you can treat our municipalities different than the other 28 municipalities in the county. I'd like to see the minutes of where you authorize the finance director, or whatever his title is, to send us a check that was for 70% funding instead of 30%. And I'd like to get a copy of the minutes of where these discussions and votes were held. I think if you pursue this course, what the municipalities in the Hudson Joint Library should do would be my strong recommendation, that we get that record together and we go to circuit court with a writ of certiorari and see if you guys follow the procedures right, because it seems to me that you took the action before you made the decision, and I don't think you're going to get upheld by doing that. I don't know, like the mayor of Hudson was saying about how good the highway department is. We've got a long association with the highway department. We've got intergovernmental cooperation with the city of Hudson on fire, ambulance, library. We're a model of what they want done in the state is intergovernmental cooperation, and we have that with the county too. And now over the course of a year or so, we're getting into an adversarial position with the county that does neither of us any good. So I think that we should be treated the same way the other 28 municipalities are, and I think you guys ought to be pretty sure of your record before we go down this road. So that's all I got.
Thank you. Any other public comment?
Good morning. My name is Rich O'Connor. I chair the Joint Area Library for our community, and I also wanted to talk on this issue. One of the things I wanted to point out is that I know that this issue has come, the issue of funding has come before this body and other committees several times going back many months, and it's interesting that nobody from the other side of this issue has ever been invited in to give the reasoning why the funding was, why we decided to stop funding the other libraries with the money coming from our taxpayers and our joint area library communities. Excuse me. And this takes on, I guess, a number of different issues, but I think it basically boils down to one thing, and I think it's something that everybody needs to hear, and that is that our city attorney advised us that the agreement that was entered into back in 2002 was an agreement that was not valid on its face. So you know that it was at first touted as a contract, and then you know that it was also decided soon after that that it was not a contract. That was, by the way, coming from the proponents of the issue of reducing our funding. Knowing that there was no legal remedy because there was in fact no legal contract. Now the verbiage has changed from a promise to a pledge, and our city attorney has told us that the agreement was not valid on its face, meaning that no one had the authority to enter into a contract or an agreement or a promise or a pledge that would commit any future library boards to spend the money in any way at all. They had no authority to direct us on how to spend our money. So no one had standing to enter into that agreement. Jim O'Connor, by the way, not a relative of mine, that really has no bearing on this, but he had a great vision, and it today is still a great vision. It came to fruition. We have a joint area library. Unfortunately, he had no standing to enter into an agreement that would commit future boards. Think about this. Think about your position right now as somebody committing this board, compelling this board to make future payments down the road 10, 20, 30 years down the road without you having any say in that whatsoever. It can't be done. It's not a legally binding agreement. And nobody's ever talked about that. Nobody's ever brought us in to give the other side of this issue. So number one, there was no agreement. Now certainly Jim O'Connor and the group that entered into that agreement could make on their own for that board the decision to send the money over to those other libraries. But once they were off that board, they could not compel future boards to do the same thing. All right? That's the most primary issue here. Irrespective of that, let's just say that they did have the authority. What we're doing is still in the best interest of our taxpayers. This isn't punitive on our part to our surrounding communities. We were put in a bad spot. And it was because of that bad spot that we found out that we did not have a legally binding contract or agreement. But we were acting in the best interest of our taxpayers, and that's what government is supposed to do. We are a quasi-governmental body, and we are compelled to act in the best interest of our taxpayers. I would expect everybody here to do the same. If we were in a different situation and the roles were reversed, I certainly would understand anybody in this room taking the same action. And I would not have any hard feelings if we were on the other side of this, because I would know that what you were doing was right for your taxpayers. That's the most important thing here. We have a fiduciary obligation to our taxpayers, and we're fulfilling that obligation. You know that in government things change. They always change. They change every 2 years. You know that. You know that there were policies that were made before this board was elected that this board reversed. That's what government does. That's what you do. And I'm sure if we went back and looked at your record, we could find plenty of examples of where you've done that. And now you're going to punish us for doing the same thing. That just doesn't make sense. It's bad policy. This is really, really bad policy. So now I understand that the vote has been delayed. I see a few people looking incredulous. Yes, the action of the committee earlier this morning was to delay the vote and not bring it up today. So now it's going to be put off until March, and perhaps, as it was mentioned earlier in the meeting, admin meeting, that in March it may be perhaps put off into April. I certainly hope that that's not for political reasons. I certainly hope that that's not to put this issue off until after the elections. So once again, please take listen to what we've had to say. If there are going to be future hearings on this, please invite in the people that were on the other side of this issue so you truly have a 360-degree angle on why this issue is before you today. And we certainly hope that you would recognize the position that we're taking here and understand the position that we're in, and vote to keep the 100% funding to our joint area library. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We have another person coming up.
My name is Stan Wecken. I'm the president of the village board in North Hudson. And I'm not as eloquent as Rich is speaking, but the one thing I want to extend to everyone is that everyone here is elected to represent the taxpayers. And how sending money from each municipality, I'm guessing that each municipality or each one of you representatives would like to protect your taxpayers in your own jurisdictions, where I don't see that happening. Are we taking money from our library? In the North Hudson, I mean, we're in a tough situation there where we might be the only part of the county that's not growing because we're kind of landlocked. So, you know, we try to maintain the services just that we have, and it takes a lot of our tax dollars. I mean, there's 5 different groups that are all in our pockets in order to take tax dollars. So I'm hoping this board will refund or put the 100% library. We've added when we can in North Hudson. I mean, it's modest amounts. It's not like the city of Hudson, but we don't have the growth that they have. You know, so we're just trying to maintain what we do, and I hope that the board will consider that when they vote, and I hope they will vote today. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else from the public that wants to speak? Anybody else from the public that wants to speak? If not, I believe I have a letter that was emailed to me by Sharon Norton-Baumann, a previous supervisor, wants that read at this meeting during public comments. So I'll have Cindy read that at this time.
This was an email sent yesterday from Sharon Norton-Baumann, originally to Pat Thompson and Scott Cox. Hello, Pat and Scott. I am unable to attend the county board meeting tomorrow morning. However, I would like to present this message to the board. I, as a former board member and administration chair, would suggest that the order of populating the board committees be done in a random manner. For instance, names of all committees being populated by board vote would be put into a hat and drawn out randomly to be put up for voting for committee membership. If that manner of populating committee members were to be used, the possibility of prearranged supervisors being elected to a particular committee would be greatly reduced. I am hopeful that there will not be a meeting that would be held before the regular county board meeting during which voting for committee membership is discussed and finalized, as was apparently done 2 years ago. I understand that the new bylaws will be voted on tomorrow and would advise that an amended version of those bylaws be considered seriously by the board. An appearance of prearranged committee assignment to the public is not, in my opinion, transparency at its best. Thank you for your consideration of this message. Sharon Norton-Baumann, Hudson, Wisconsin.
Thank you, Cindy. If there's no other public comment, we will move on. Thank you. I have the consent agenda. Do I have a motion to approve? Supervisor Babbitt, the motion. Supervisor Novotny, second. Any discussion? There's no discussion. Ready to vote. Agnes? And that was all yeses. Thank you. Presentations, appointments, no appointments, annual reports. I heard that
Mr. Koch is unable to be present this morning for his report. I believe it was in the packet. And if you have questions after your review, please contact Dale. If you have any questions, he will be rescheduled for a future report to the board. He passes on his best wishes to the board this morning. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Administrator Thompson, then we have your administration report.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. There's only 2 items in the report. The first is the monthly financial reports through the end of January 2016, first month in the year. So there's not a lot of tracking going on at this point with only 1 month of activity, but the report is in your packet. The second item is an item that was referred from the board to Administration Committee, a review of the Assistant County Administrator job description. That item was referred back to the Administration Committee. The committee met last month or this month and reviewed that. The Human Resources Director made some modifications to the job description and presented that information to the committee. And the committee was satisfied with her report, and we're moving forward with recruitment at this point. So I don't know if there's any questions on that. Heather Murray, the HR Director, is present as well if you have questions. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. We have a appointment, a postponing appointment?
Yes, this is an appointment that will be postponed 1 year for the Regional Business Fund Board of Directors, and we'll reappoint the incumbent, or at least keep him on for 1 additional year until they're going through a transition now. Okay. And Bill Rubin requested that we keep the appointment in place for 1 more year. So we'll put that on for next year's appointments.
Okay, thank you. We'll get into our business items. The first one is a resolution designating the week of April 11th through April 15th, 2016 as Work Zone Safety Awareness Week in St. Croix County. Do I have a motion? Supervisor Peterson, second from Supervisor Hanson. Any discussion? Supervisor Osnes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to make an amendment to the resolution. Under number 1, after highway workers strike were killed, and insert who tragically lost their lives while working. I'll make a motion of that.
I have a second. Supervisor Peavy seconds that. Any discussion? If there's no discussion, we're voting on the amendment. The resolution. Change that wording. So if there's no discussion, we'll vote on that at this time. That was all yeses, so the amendment passed. Now we're back to the original motion. Is there any discussion on that? If there's no discussion, we'll vote on that at this time. And as that passes, at this time, I will read the proclamation for that Work Safety Week. And so we have here from St. Croix, whereas St. Croix County is committed to performing inspections, maintenance, and construction work to ensure a safe, well-maintained roadway system, and whereas work zones are active daily through the county, and we must protect highway workers as they work to improve the safety and quality of life for those traveling St. Croix County roads. And whereas we recognize those who work in the roadway construction and maintenance, as well as traffic engineers, traffic operation personnel, law enforcement officers, emergency personnel, and others who work in environments, including the open road. Whereas we honor those who have been injured. Remember the 3 county highway workers who tragically lost their lives in 2015 while working in the county highway work zones. And whereas with the aid of education as well as enforcement efforts, St. Croix County is raising driver awareness of the need to slow down, stay alert, avoid distractions, obey the signs and the flag person to prevent crashes and injuries. Now therefore, I, Roger Larson, Chair of the St. Croix County Board of Supervisors, do hereby proclaim the week of April 11th through April 15th, 2016 as Work Zone Awareness Week, and the month of April 2016 as Work Zone Safety Awareness Month. So with that said, let's work hard to give our people on the county roads and that, law enforcement, county workers, everybody a break and slow down a little bit. Thank you, everyone. And we'll move on. Number 2 on our business is ordinance repealing ordinance number 34694 and creating Chapter 31 Abandonment Personal Property of St. Croix County Court of Ordinance. And who, Supervisor Brinkman. Second, Supervisor Babbitt. Discussions, Supervisor Brinkman.
Mr. Chairman and board members, this comes from public protection, and what it is to fix a mistake that was made back in the 2003 codification of dispersing of personal property that becomes the county's property. The best case I could give of this is anybody that's drove around the back of this building in the last 3 years has seen a green lawnmower sitting down in the evidence bin. We have no way of getting rid of it. So this simply provides language to allow the sheriff's department to donate such vehicles. Just purely a housekeeping thing.
Thank you. Any questions? Any other discussion? If there's no questions or just... Okay. So we have a motion and a second on the floor. If there's no further discussions, it's time to vote on that. And that's all yeses. Thank you. We'll move forward. Number 3 on the agenda is the resolution amending maintenance and Board of Jail inmate fee schedule. Everybody has a copy of that. Do I have a motion? Supervisor Brinkman, second. Supervisor Nelson. Discussion. Supervisor Brinkman.
This also comes from public protection. We had a busy meeting, the last one. The biggest thing to note in this is that the daily monitoring is going to go from $10 a day down to $5.25 a day. We are switching vendors who provide the ankle bracelets for our Huber inmates, and therefore we are going to pass that on to them. I'm sure when you look at what we are currently charging our Huber inmates, it will be in line with what services we provide them amongst the rest of the state. So we are, the sheriff has agreed to pass on that $4.75 savings from the new ankle bracelet monitoring system to the Huber inmates.
Okay, thank you. Any questions, Supervisor Berkey?
I'd like to offer a friendly amendment with respect to the daily fee for the Huber Law section. I looked at the chart that was provided from around the state, and then also there were some counties, Chippewa, Don, Eau Claire, Barron, Polk, Sawyer, Washburn, and Burnett, that were pulled out a little more tightly, I think probably for good reason by the board. I think that when we average those, it comes up to $17.38 a day. My suggestion is that we change from $20 to $18 a day for the Huber Law section. And I want to point out that not all, but many individuals that are sentenced to use the Huber Law section of our jail facility would find $20 per per day not manageable. The working poor and also many middle-class income individuals do not have that extra money in their pockets. And I referred specifically to the information that Public Protection provided on various jobs, job titles, and hourly rate. So that substantiates that point. So I don't disregard that these folks need to fulfill their obligation to society for misdeeds and use of poor judgment that caused them to be in detention in the first place. So just asking that we consider this change of an amendment to $18 per day, being reasonable, fair, and able to work with those folks so that we don't create additional burdens. Thank you for this consideration.
Made that in the form of a motion for amending. I have a second. Anybody wants a second? Supervisor Schoberg, second. Discussion? Supervisor Brinkman?
I do believe that the $20 a day is a break-even point for the county. It is not as simple as lowering it to $18. Because of the fact that then we have to go back and look at what services we're going to cut. For instance, I don't know how many, I haven't researched it that greatly. However, we are one of the counties that do provide 3 meals a day. Not all counties do that. So it's not as simple as just lowering it, because then we're going to be subsidizing it. We're going to have to, if that's the case, you're going to have to refer it back to Public Protection and have them work with the Sheriff's Department to determine what service we're going to be cutting to get down to $18 a day.
Could we? Sure. Supervisor Peterson.
Supervisor Brinkman answered the question I was going to pose, and I also think we need to realize that looking at some of these other counties, they're not sitting next to a major metropolitan area as we are, and therefore I believe that our higher costs are justified. So I would vote against this amendment.
Supervisor Nelson.
And I think the questions were asked of Public Protection is this as low as we can go to do break even. So I think the question was asked as far as doing that, because I understand the information Jill has too. But yeah, to me it seems like a lot of money, but we have to break. That's the breaking point, I think, as far as the county goes.
Should we have some input from Scott Knutson back here, see if he wants to come forward? Oh, he doesn't want to?
Good morning, Andy, thank you. Actually, those were just some of the things I was going to touch upon, was the 3 meals a day that some of the other counties may not provide to their Huber inmates because they either eat while they're at work or, you know, as they exit the facility, they can stop on the way, and we don't allow that for the county. And that's part of the tracking process as well.
So I like the idea of taking it back to committee to look more closely at, this was a chart that actually compares some of the larger counties as well. Supervisor Brigman, in regard to your comment, so I think, you know, there's other high population counties here. In terms of the meals provided, I was looking here quickly to see whether or not that is the case with these other comparables, and I see nurse fee, doctor visit, medication, juvenile rental. Is meals included on this chart? Yeah, because I used that information, and then you consolidated, again, these 8 counties that I mentioned earlier.
That is not, I didn't have the header on my copies, so.
Okay.
So, no, it does not.
Gets to what they're offering. Supervisor
Mr.
Brinkman.
Chairman, I would like to point out that this isn't what makes up the $20 fee. These are additional services that are provided and what costs they are, so.
Okay.
So I guess my question, or if I might just clarify, is that this, I thought, was a useful document, but it doesn't have all the information that would be useful. including the cost of what the meals would be. Is it possible to, I guess I'll look to the Public Protection Committee Chair, to take this back and look at that more closely? With the information that you provided to us, it would appear that on average would be fair to be 17 or 18, but I chose a higher number with respect to our size.
Well, I think that would be up to this board by how they vote on this amendment, is if they would, unless you'd like to change your amendment to have it sent back to the board, obviously, that is an option. I do know that right now we have 12 people a day in our Huber Center, so this would take $24 a day from the Sheriff's Department if we continue at the same services, and that comes out to be $8,700 or $8,800 a year that we would then be, that we're gonna have to come up with in our next budget to fund this as is.
Okay.
But the answer to your question is, Jill, if you want to change your amendment and have the whole board vote on it, I don't see why that couldn't be done.
At this time, we've had a lot of discussion on it. Should we, on the amendment, Scott, did you want to, Supervisor Nelson?
Yeah, one of the things also is we just had a big decrease in the cost of the meals too. So the sheriff has actually been looking through all the part of the operations, even the Hubers, to find cost savings, and has passed it on, and we voted on in public protection. So there's other cost savings that we've also done, and this is a break-even point. And as I said before, the question was asked: is this as low as we can go for now, or else, as Supervisor Brinkman says, we're going to have to figure out the money, $8,800 to $9,000. But the meals went down how much, Andy? Oh, it was like almost 50%, because we thought that was a little bit strange, but it ended up working out. So we're trying to make sure that all the inmates and people on these programs are getting the services, but that we're doing it at a good price and not trying to get off on the cheap. So we're just trying to do it at the break-even point.
Okay, we've had a motion and a second to amend from $20 to $18. Everybody aware at this time we'll vote on that? All no's and one yes, so the amendment failed. We'll move on with the original resolution. Is there any more discussion on that? If there's no more discussion, we'll vote.
No, Scott's gonna get a second.
We had a second.
No, Scott's
Oh, didn't, got a second that, Scott. Okay, now we got the motion and second up there, so we're ready to vote. That's all yeses. Thank you. We'll move on to our next agenda item, number 4. That's a resolution authorizing the St. Croix County Sheriff to charge a fee to outside agencies for services of computer forensic lab. Motions from Supervisor Brinkman. Do I have a second? Second from Supervisor Babbitt. Discussion. Supervisor Brinkman.
I swear this is the last thing I'll have to talk about today. I promise. So St. Croix County has forensic equipment that in place now that other counties are coming to us asking for us to do work for them. As of right now, we cannot charge them. However, the Sheriff's Department has found that there are counties out there willing to pay for our services. The most important part of this I want everyone to know is that this is strictly for people outside of Pierce County, or outside of St. Croix County. I know.
I know. So anyways, for instance, right now, the city of Richmond, their police department uses our forensics, the village of Baldwin, Glenwood City, none of that would change. This would strictly be for outside municipalities from different counties and other county agencies that would like to use our services.
Okay, thank you. Any other discussion or questions? So there's a motion and a second on the floor. If there's no other discussion, we'll vote at this time. Supervisor Kilber? That's all yeses. Thank you. We'll move down to our next item, which is a resolution authorizing St. Croix County Clerk of Circuit Courts to contract with the Wisconsin Department of Revenue for unpaid debt collection. Supervisor Brinkman, motion, second? Supervisor Osler, second? We have a motion, second. Discussion, Supervisor Brinkman?
Well, here I am again.
Liar, you dog.
I feel like a politician. I just lied to everyone. Sorry, Corp Counsel Cox. This one and Scott Nelson, I may lean on you somewhat to help me better describe this. But basically what this is when people have unpaid speeding tickets, unpaid outstanding warrant in other counties, or they're arrested in other counties, we can get our money. And this comes from the clerk of courts, and this is all uncollected money that we will, with this resolution, be able to collect.
Okay.
I would defer to Scott Nelson to add to it, however.
Supervisor Nelson?
We have a lot of money that's sitting out there. It's thousands of dollars, and this is a way for the county to get that. The one thing I kind of cringed at a little bit is that they charge $35 every time they do it. So I think there's a minimum that they have to go after to make it worthwhile. But this is an ability for the courts to be able to get money back that people have been dodging for years, which is not so much entitled to the county, but it's the forfeiture or the fine that they've occurred with having different tickets and such.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Supervisor Kilber?
They don't have any warrants put out if they don't pay?
I think this is to a certain level of some type of tickets. I couldn't tell you exactly. I'm sure if there's warrants and they're actually going after them with officers. Would you like to comment on this, please?
Yeah, that's, many times there are warrants issued, but if they're in other parts of the state, sometimes the warrants are only good for surrounding counties, geographic areas, and just because of that cost to bring them back for the $100 warrant is much more than, what we would get in. So there are some warrants that, while entered, we'll probably never see them in this part of the state.
Okay. Supervisor Hanson?
I'm not sure I understood. Is this a fixed cost per collection, or is it a variable cost? Do we pay a percentage?
I believe it was 35% or $35 each transaction, but I think there's a minimum. That's what I remember there, because I thought it was, so the Department of Revenue is making their $35, but we're making whatever's above and beyond that they claim.
Okay. Any other discussion or questions? If none, it's time to vote. All yeses, the one no, so we have one no. That passes. We'll move on to number 6, resolution to improve the timeliness of reimbursement of contractors for the West Central Wisconsin Community Development Block Grant Housing Region. Who wants to take that with a motion? Supervisor Babbitt, second. Supervisor Kiesler. Who wants a discussion on that? Supervisor Babbitt.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a fairly complicated issue, but I'll try to be as concise as possible. It appears that the reimbursement to contractors, at least in part, is controlled by the state. And for various reasons, the state tends not to move very quickly to cut checks to contractors who are doing work, not only for the state but for the counties, but who are again paid by the state. This is an effort to be sure that those contractors get paid quickly. And part of what's happened as a result of the delays in payment is that we're losing contractors who have otherwise been good work partners and who have done very good work for us because they're not getting paid quickly enough. So this is really an opportunity for us to make sure that the payment happens more quickly so that we don't have to rely on the state's timing, essentially.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Discuss Supervisor Hanson.
It's kind of just a general question. If we're having a delay of payment in this area, is there possibility we should be reviewing our payment, how our payments get made across the board? Are there other delays being done? Are contractors not getting paid in a timely manner in other cases? It's just a general question and something we should think about.
I don't have it. Supervisor Brinkman?
I was at the meeting where this was discussed. Could we turn to Administrator Thompson for his opinion on this?
Right, this is regarding a very specific program. It's the Community Development Block Grant Program, as Supervisor Babbitt explained. We're part of a 10-county region. Chippewa County is the lead county. There's 10 counties in that region. All counties have been asked to contribute $5,000 towards a revolving loan fund for a total of $50,000. The administration committee has already approved a contingency fund transfer of $5,000, and the other counties will do the same. And that revolving loan fund will expedite payment to the contractors who are making these home improvements. This resolution was at the request of the administration committee to urge the state of Wisconsin to, brush up on their administrative procedures so that the contractors do get paid in a timely manner, like Supervisor Babbitt explained. So this is just an effort of the 10 counties to try to help expedite that process, but we also want to put the state, or not on notice, but at least request our legislative delegation and the Department of Administration to clean up some of their processes and procedures so that contractors can get paid quickly. So, but this is a very specific program, Supervisor Hanson, and I don't see other examples of where contractors doing business for the county are not getting paid in a timely fashion. We make sure that they are. Thanks.
Thank you. Supervisor Octoroff?
Yeah, I'm in favor of the resolution, and my question is, so now the county or the counties are going to be paying the contractors. What happens when the federal government pays? Do they pay the contractor again and they reimburse us, or does the county put in for that amount of money that the government should be paying us? How is that being handled now, since we become like the middleman?
These dollars are eventually all reimbursed by the state government. So that this is just a pool of dollars, a loan actually, to the 10-county region that will expedite those payments. But those are all reimbursed dollars from the state and federal government.
Thanks.
Any other questions or discussion? There's not, everybody understands the resolution. We'll vote at this time. And that's all yeses. Thank you. We'll move on to number 7 on the agenda, which is a resolution approving alteration of supervisor district boundaries in Baldwin. And Supervisor Berkey.
I move to approve.
Okay, do I have a second? Supervisor Leapried. In our discussion, everybody know what, Cindy, do you want to explain that? So they understand what the boundaries are?
I've had similar resolutions come before the board in which a municipality has annexed land that crosses a county supervisory district line. In this case, the Village of Baldwin annexed approximately 7 acres, 6.75 acres, which cross the county supervisory line from the town of O'Galley. And it's a commercial use property. I believe it's going to be used for a commercial storage or storage unit, so there's zero population, will be zero population for that. And if the village didn't, they've requested the line be altered. If they didn't, they'd have to create a new ward which has zero population.
Does everybody understand? Any questions? Discussion? If not, we have a motion to second. We'll vote on it this time. That was all yeses. Thank you. Number 8 on our agenda is the resolution relocating 2016 county payments, reallocating 2016 county payments to municipal libraries. And this one here, I don't believe came forward, did it?
It did not.
So it didn't come forward, so we have to skip that one. So number 9 is the resolution amending.
Chair,
Supervisor
I
Schott.
believe we could bring it up if there is a proper motion to suspend the rules, if the rest of the board would want to entertain some discussion on this subject, even without the administration committee's resolution. Would that be proper, Scott?
Yes, with a motion to suspend the rules adoption, which is a 2/3 vote of those here today, the board could consider this resolution.
Therefore, I propose a motion to suspend the rules to entertain discussion on this matter today.
I'll second.
Supervisor Octor, second. So we have a motion and a second to suspend the rules. Question, Supervisor, what? I don't think, let's see, we have to have a vote on this, according to Corp Council. So, and that takes a 2/3 vote?
That's correct.
So it takes 13 to pass that. So everybody understand? We're suspending the rules so you can discuss.
It takes,
What?
there are 18 here today, correct?
Yeah, so 12.
So it's 2/3, it's 12.
Yeah, okay. Stand corrected. So at this time, we'll vote on suspending the rules.
Members present.
Two noes, the rest yes. So we can discuss that. So turn it back over to Supervisor Ring. Questions now?
Yes, I just had a question. So we have the option of acting on this based on that vote?
That is correct.
Yes. So, Supervisor Schulberg?
I think a lot of us want to get this behind us. I know it's been a very controversial issue, and we've heard very eloquent representation of the point of view of the Joint Library. And prior to that, we've heard opinions from other members of the affected libraries, including information received from Buck Malik. We all know that there was a original promise made back in 2002 that if we permit the formation of the joint library, then the joint library, then president, Jim O'Connor, promised not only to this board and to the finance committee at that time, as well as the neighboring affected libraries, that since it was now the joint library group of municipalities that would be collecting the tax and no longer the county, that it would honor the obligation and pay the affected neighbors just like the county was doing. At this point in time, no one's paying our neighbors. So we heard that the Hudson Area Joint Library would be hurt by having to reinstate its payments. And we've heard that the neighboring libraries are hurt in the meanwhile because the payments have been suspended. So we have hurting libraries. One of the reasons for this hurt, of course, is that there's been some serious underfunding of the Hudson Area Joint Library for a number of years. In fact, if it wasn't for the special legislation enacted a couple years ago, the Hudson Area Joint Library would be so underfunded that it would be not able to avoid the county tax levy. So I most recently petitioned the city council, though I failed, to increase the funding so that what you're about to see happen now, where the library might close again, we heard that threat on Mondays. I'm sorry, is there a... We've heard that threat, so now we know that we're up against a tough place. We could be causing the Hudson Library to close again, and I don't want that to happen. I've talked to a number of the county supervisors, especially those serving the Hudson community, and no one wants to hurt the Hudson Library. But we also have a fiduciary duty to all of the libraries in the county. We're collecting taxes from the rural residents, and the rural residents situated in the town of Hudson, the town of St. Joseph, and the village of North Hudson used to have portions of their funds go to the affected libraries, and that's not happening now. So how do we solve both problems without doing damage? It's difficult. There is one way you may consider this, and that is to not hurt the Hudson Library, go ahead and pay them their 100%. But then we are finding that the affected libraries are hurting. And we owe a responsibility to those affected libraries as well. So how do we make everybody whole without hurting the Hudson Library? Well, Buck Malik came up with a solution a couple years ago, and he said, let's have the administration committee make those other libraries whole. And that can be done out of the use of a contingent fund, but it's kind of year by year whether or not we do that, so it's nothing they can rely on in their budgets. So that's not a great solution, but it's a solution. So perhaps we should approve the 100% and acknowledge something that maybe the county should take some responsibility for. Back in 2002, when we agreed to the formation of the joint library, that could have been more artfully drawn. It could have stated that this joint library formation is permitted for so long as the Hudson Area Joint Library honors its commitment to its neighbors. And upon the termination of those payments, the joint library shall be void. I don't even know if that's legal. You know, the state library funding situation, all of Statute 43, it's a hodgepodge of laws. But perhaps we could have done a better job back when the library was allowed to form. We basically approved it, and once approved, whatever happens after that was beyond our control, as Rich O'Connor has pointed out to us. And we all knew that. So our options are several. One is, as I just proposed, that is to proceed to pay the 100% to the Hudson Area Joint Library, so they're not hurt, and hope that in future years they continue to increase the funding, and maybe with some later board membership on that library board, they once again recommence the payment to their neighbors. They're presently not inclined to do so. And I would vote in favor of that as long as I knew we were going to make the rest of the affected libraries whole. A second alternative for us is to say, no, let's go with its reallocation. The promise was breached. We've all heard that. And the 30% difference can be reallocated to the affected neighbors. And for a buttress of that argument, back in 2002, when the Hudson Area Library was formed, and for the first 7 or 8 years, Hudson Area Library and all the other libraries, we only paid from the county for rural circulation 70%. So they're getting what they were originally promised back in 2002 right now. But they got used to the 100%, of course. So that's a second option. And the third option is to pay them their 100% and not do any damage repair to the affected libraries. I don't like that option. And then the administration gave us a fourth option, and that is to kick the can down the road. And after hearing from the representatives that spoke this morning in a public comment period, perhaps that's not doing the job that we're here to do. So I made my statement. I'm proposing, if you will, the reinstatement of 100% to Hudson Area Library, and for the county to do damage control to the affected adverse libraries, which would be about a $49,000 budget item, can be taken care of out of the contingent fund with the administration committee, for the administration committee to hear, but upon a strong approval here of this entire board, they'd probably act in that regard. So that's my motion, is proposal number 1, pay 100% to Hudson Area Library and make up the damage done to the other libraries. Thank you for listening.
Is there a second? I have a motion on the floor. Supervisor Austin seconded. Discussion.
Could I?
Supervisor
No, go
Brand.
ahead. Mine is just a
Supervisor
point of
Murphy.
clarification, because I'm confused as to procedure, in that the administration committee took no action on the resolution, and we postponed it until a following meeting of the administration committee. So I guess maybe it's a question for Corp Counsel. Can we even act on this? Because the parent committee has not really given any advice up or down.
I believe the board can, because the board lawfully suspended its own rules, which would prevent consideration of this topic. So the Mr. Schoberg or Supervisor Schoberg's motion is properly before this board.
Supervisor Austin.
Questions for Scott also. With this vote, is it a 2/3, 3/4, or a simple majority?
Well, with respect to this particular motion, it's a simple majority of the board. And I don't want to confuse people, but if you go down another route, which is the reallocation, Administrator Thompson asked me to research the viability of passing the reallocation or whether it's indeed a budget amendment, and I believe it is a budget amendment, and that would require a 2/3 vote to reduce the funding to 70%. So basically what Supervisor Schoberg's motion is to affirm the 100%, and that's a simple majority.
And then a follow-up, Scott. And then where will we be, are we going back to admin then and asking for the 49,000?
That's my understanding. That's the spirit of the motion. So the $49,000 and change, I don't have the exact figure, but the committee or the admin committee then would be considering a contingent or fund from the contingency fund, and I think because it would be less than 10% of the activity as a whole, the admin committee would have jurisdiction over that.
Supervisor Brinkman?
Didn't we vote on this 3 years ago or something like that? What are we currently doing now? Are we paying Hudson the 100% and currently reimbursing? Wasn't that Buck Malik's motion? What are we currently doing? I guess that's what I'm going to ask someone.
What we currently have in the budget, what was approved in the budget, was 100% funding for the Hudson Area Joint Library and 70% for the remaining libraries, correct?
No, I believe it's 100% for all libraries, including out-of-county libraries, and that was amended in the budget.
Supervisor,
right here.
Supervisor Octoroff?
I may not be the most eloquent speaker, but what happened when the joint library was formed, to my knowledge, was possibly just a verbal agreement, but it was people's verbal agreement. If you need that law to formalize some verbal agreements, it's a shame. Because this was a verbal agreement. We've had people come and talk to us that this was the reason why the joint library formed. And in regards to the 100%, I would like to see Hudson only be reimbursed 70%, and I'm pro-library, and that 30% dispersed, because then a lot of the libraries are going to be hurt some. Hudson, because it went from 100 to 70%. The other libraries, because that 30% does not fully reimburse those libraries the amount of money that Hudson should have been paying those according to the original agreement. And by paying Hudson 100% and the county reimbursing these other libraries, that means something's coming from some other area in the county. We don't know where it's going to come from. Whereas if you do the 70% and distribute the remaining 30, it's more are going to be hurt, but they're going to be hurt less. And as soon as Hudson comes back on their original, even though it might not have been quite fully legal because of the wordage used in the agreement, it was verbally agreed that this was the reason for the joint library to form. And as soon as they come back to their original agreement, I would like to reimburse Hudson 100%. But not now. I cannot agree to that. You know, I want to go to 70%, and then if we have to go to a fund, what we were talking about for finances, distributing that remaining 30 among the libraries that are owed the money that was originally in the quote non-legal agreement.
Supervisor Cook?
I have a question first for council. So just to clarify, we are voting on Supervisor Schoberg's motion, not the resolution that is currently listed in the agenda.
That is correct.
Okay. And then my comment is, this is a highly emotional issue, as I know by some of the discussion we've had previously on the board and conversations I've had with people in the community. I think, and we can go back and forth on the legality of the agreement, I think that in the past, the agreement was made in good faith. I believe that the payments were made in good faith when the environment allowed that to happen. I do not think that we should be penalizing another body that is trying to provide a public service to the community because the current environment does not allow them, it doesn't provide enough funding for them to move forward. And this is a decision they made to keep their services stable and providing that library service to the community. I cannot support the reduction to the Hudson Library. I believe that would be in conflict of the representation of my constituents. And I hope that we can move forward with Supervisor Schoberg's recommendation to maintain the 100% funding. Thanks.
Supervisor Novotny.
Put it simply, I don't understand how the City of Hudson or the Hudson Library would be able to eliminate funding or the subsidies to the area libraries that they use and then continue using the area libraries, the services of those libraries that was established with the joint library system. How do you cut the funding and then continue to use it? I mean, if you go to a health club and stop paying them, do you continue to go to that health club? So this is where I've got a little heartburn on this whole situation. You pay for services. And if you don't pay for the services, you don't get the services. So in effect, are they abandoning the joint library system? These are my questions.
Supervisor Brinkman, I'll be back. Oh, Supervisor Peterson.
I don't think that my constituents in the eastern part of the county would be particularly happy if I voted to, in my oversimplification, use some of their tax money to kind of fix, in my estimation, a problem that Hudson and the joint library system brought upon themselves. So I would have to vote against this amendment.
Supervisor Brinkman.
My question is if we want to keep the Hudson Library at 100% and keep the other libraries in the county at 100%, that's currently what we're doing now, correct?
Right.
I guess I'm going to ask Corp Counsel, is that what we're doing?
Correct. That's what's currently in the budget.
So why would we have to vote on that to continue doing it the way we're doing it? Just a question.
Well,
and I ask that because basically that is what Supervisor Schoberg is requesting, if I'm understanding you correct, sir.
the one wrinkle is that the committee then postponed the action today, and perhaps that has some bearing on, they directed the finance director not to distribute the money. So absent some other action, I think that's where it stands. But you're right, you're voting for exactly what's included in the budget document.
Supervisor Schoberg.
If I may respond to Supervisor Brickman's statement, back in 2014, then Supervisor Malik caused a special use of the contingent fund of the administration committee to make whole the affected libraries who did not receive the reimbursement or the reallocation from the joint library. So for that year, the administration committee made all the libraries whole and did still give 100% to Hudson. Okay? So that's what I'm trying to return to, is what was done in 2014. In 2015, pressure was put upon the joint library to go ahead and make those payments so that we didn't have to take it out of the general fund, if you will, the contingent fund, because that comes from all taxpayers as opposed to being paid from where it should properly be paid, is the joint library, all right? So in 2015, all of the affected libraries suffered damage of about $55,000, all right? So they had to adjust their budgets. 2016 now, so far, all those affected libraries are down $49,000 from where they would be had the payments been made to those affected libraries for the use of those libraries by the residents of the town of Hudson, village of North Hudson, and the town of St. Joseph. That's what I'm trying to restore. And where, if I could address good Supervisor Peterson's comment about where does the money come from? It comes from the general fund. The general fund is created in part, at least, out of sales tax revenue. And I think back when Supervisor Malik made the proposal, it might have even referred to the sales tax revenue. And if we're permitted to, I would say administration committee can look at that as a direct allocation, but I think it ends up coming out of the general fund anyway.
Yes.
I guess I've reconsidered my position on, so now that the board has taken this up, I would say that even if this resolution fails, if nothing else happens today, I believe that the 100% reimbursement has to be paid because the board has now acted upon it. Our board has considered it.
Supervisor Ring, you had something?
Can you explain what you mean by if nothing else happens today?
Well, so we have two competing things here. We had before the meeting, it was postponed. Now I'm trying to address Supervisor Brinkman's question of, so isn't this motion in part exactly what was in the budget document? Well, and in part it is. So it's sort of like, well, what happens if nothing happens today? What's the status quo? The status quo is what's in the budget document, I think. I really have never had this come up before, but I think that's the correct response.
I think you're right. I think the budget document is a policy document approved by the board. It contemplates 100% reimbursement for the Hudson Area Joint Library and the other libraries as well. If the administration committee at their next meeting wants to take up a contingency fund request to accomplish what Supervisor Malik did a few years ago, they could take that up as a separate action. I believe this motion should be, or this resolution motion should, I believe you should defeat it or take no action and let the budget document rule. The 70% has already been reimbursed. The county will reimburse the remaining 30%. If the administration committee then wants to take this up at their next meeting as a separate action item, contingency fund request, they can do that.
Supervisor Ring?
I would just like to remind you, though, when we adopted the budget, that action was proposed that we reimburse Hudson Joint Library at 70%. We decided at that time the money does not have to be dispersed, so that the latest we could do it would be at this meeting. I mean, so we did anticipate making this decision.
Supervisor Octoroff?
Well, if we defeat this motion that wants the 100%, can I make another motion to bring back the original resolution of paying only 70%? And if we voted on that today, would that not occur?
Yes. The way that I look at the pending motion is that it reaffirms what's in the budget, and it also directs the admin committee to consider a contingency fund transfer. So if that's defeated, there could be another motion supporting the reallocation, correct?
Supervisor Peavy.
Yeah, I just wanted to make the comment that this money we're talking about only comes from the rural residents, and Supervisor Peterson is right. Hudson made this issue, and one solution that Supervisor Soyberg didn't suggest is we go back to 70% for everybody, which then Hudson would get their full share, and then we could look at other forms of dollars for the other libraries that are treating everybody fairly. So it's another option to look at. And, you know, residents, again, in my township, we're paying almost, library tax is almost equal to fire protection. In some numbers, it's about $35 per person for library fee. The dollars are getting, you know, getting to be big dollars, and this is getting to be a big issue when we start paying that much money. And I know this isn't the time, but when this comes up in the fall for budgeting, I would like to see the numbers of how the total dollars even comes up with, because it seems when we're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars for this transfer of library services, it's getting a little high. But I would support Supervisor Octoroff's idea of coming back, funding Hudson at 70%. Thank you.
Supervisor Berkey.
A couple things here. I also support Supervisor Peterson and Supervisor Peavy and Supervisor Octorhoff's position on this. The other piece that feels really crappy, excuse the expression, is that we just had an administration committee meeting, and I'm looking at Roy, Supervisor Stroberg, who I also consider a friend, and we made a decision in the administration committee that we were going to refer this to a follow-up meeting of administration. So I'm disappointed that we're doing some maneuvers here to change what was the direction of a meeting that we just had at 8 a.m. before our 8:30 meeting. Thank you.
Supervisor Babbitt.
This is obviously a very troubling issue for pretty much everybody in this group, not to mention in the audience today. I'm struck by a couple of things. I'll try to be brief. Supervisor Octorhoff's comment, I think, is important here in the sense that, from my perspective, regardless of the form of the agreement, whether it was a contractually executed legal document or a gentleman's handshake or whatever it was, there was an agreement made. And this body acted based on the fact that that agreement had been made. However, to some extent, it seems to me that libraries ought to be funded well anyway. I'm not quite sure how it is that over the years the funding of libraries has become such an incredibly complex thing. Libraries are a very important part of all of our communities, and frankly, I don't think we should even be having this debate. The libraries ought to be funded. Citizens ought to be able to use them. If I live in Glenwood, I ought to be able to come to Hudson and use the library, and if Glenwood has something I need, I should be able to go there. But nonetheless, we're now in the middle of this complex conundrum of trying to figure out funding, and I understand concerns about tax levies. I certainly understand the pressure that the city of Hudson and the joint library's been under for a long time. All of us, to one degree or another, are kind of in the same boat to one extent. But having said all of that, and wishing that we didn't have to be in the process of taking this amount of time to debate an issue, which, at least in my opinion, we shouldn't have to deal with to begin with. It seems to me that Supervisor Schoberg's compromise proposal this morning makes some sense. It is true that almost no matter what we do, we're placing some group of libraries, either the joint library or the rural libraries, in a tough spot financially, and Supervisor Schoberg has a proposal that I think can, at least for now, make them all whole, and I support that.
Supervisor Brinkman.
I would like to make mention that Supervisor Schoberg's plan puts back in place what we used in 2014, which did make everyone whole, correct? One of the, not living in the city of Hudson, not using the Hudson Library, you know, I think Hudson should pay their fair share. I do believe that. But I also know that they added $55,000 to their budget this year for their library. You know, part of this is that I feel like right now we're penalizing Hudson for previous, I don't know if you'd call it mistakes or decisions that their boards made. And again, I'm going to defer to Supervisor Schoberg, but didn't they increase spending last year on their library? I know it was substantial this year, but I believe in the 2015 year, they also put a fair amount of more money into it. So there's a side of me that says we're penalizing the current library for the actions of previous libraries when the city of Hudson has shown in the last 2 years that they're trying to find a way to fund their library. I'm just going to add this. I had a talk with another supervisor last week about this, and what an icky thing to have to deal with, because it just seems like there is no winners in this, and that's why I support Supervisor Schoberg's going back to what we did in 2014 to make all the libraries whole.
Supervisor Nelson.
I watched the last city council meeting, and I have some friends on the city council, and they basically said they were tapped out. So I take them at their word, and what I would like to see in the future, though, that we have resolution between the county and the city, and that we're not in this position again, because this just causes hard feelings, and you really sometimes need to take the personalities out of it and do what's best for the libraries. And I've kind of been a little bit critical because it's come up quite a bit, but I don't like the animosity that I hear. So I would support Roy's his motion to do that. But I would like to see in the future that we find resolution that makes everyone whole, and that the county really is more of an overseer instead of a willing participant, being right in the middle of it, putting out the fires. I did that for over 30 years. I really would like it that everybody works with each other respectfully, and that we make everyone whole, and as we go down the road, make sure that everybody works on fair ground. So I would support Mr. Sobor.
Thank you. Supervisor Osmus.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Living in River Falls, my library has taken the biggest hit since 2013. This last year was over $30,000 alone. And we've lost staff, which is painful. And again, like Mr. Brinkman says, I don't think there's winners in this situation. In 2013, in November, Buck Malick did come up with the $39,000 from the sales tax. Going back in 2014 and traveling to all the libraries, the librarians at that time had said, if this happens again, please don't go out and ask the rest of our county taxpayers to fund something that the joint library has failed to do. Now everyone is bailing them out again. I do support Mr. Schulberg's motion. I like the idea, more or less, of the $49,000. And I'm asking that if we do go with this, that sometime this summer, that through the administration committee, we need to address this again and figure out what we're doing. But I think with the 100% and the 49,000, it's a win-win for everybody right now.
Supervisor Nelson. Hanson. I looked at one person.
I have been confused with people who I don't respect as much as Scott, so that's just fine. I gotta say, my district, New Richmond, the library is only after River Falls taking the biggest hit here. I agree that it's not the responsibility of the taxpayers across the county to support a policy that the Joint Library Association has taken upon itself. They fulfilled that agreement for 10 years. And if fulfilling an agreement for 10 years doesn't constitute a de facto contract, why I'm confused about what contract law is. A fiduciary duty, which is a phrase that continues to be bantered about by the people of the Library Association, a fiduciary duty lies on all of us to be fair to each and every participant of this system and all the taxpayers, not only one municipality. Now I have to contrast this. I hate to see the library patrons of the Hudson area being held hostage. It's their services which are threatened, in addition to the funds for River Falls and for New Richmond and for Baldwin and for Hammond. It's just a matter of hubris on the part of the Library Association to choose to not fulfill their obligation. So based on the advice of one lawyer for the city of Hudson, they have chosen to forego their agreement. I say, go ahead and fund it for now, and let's put her in front of not a lawyer, but a judge, and let somebody who has the authority to make a decision. So I'm going to vote to fund the library with the caveat on behalf of my constituents that we resent the Hudson Library Association not fulfilling its agreed obligation.
Any other questions? Discussions? Supervisor Kilburg.
I move we table it, so in effect, we would keep what we currently have with the budget.
That would, wouldn't that have to be an amendment?
That's a motion to table.
Okay. Is there a second to that? Is there a second to table? Is there a second to table? I've asked 3 times, there's no seconds, so the motion to table is gone. So now we're back to the original motion on the floor. So there's a motion and a second to make the library whole and send it back to admin committee to make the other libraries whole. Everybody? What?
Send it back to admin for the 49,000.
Right, yeah. So
Mr.
does everybody
Chair.
understand that, what you're voting on?
Mr. Chair, I think the board should be clear that the sending back to the admin committee is advisory, and it doesn't commit the admin committee from doing anything on it, so.
It's just an advisory?
It's an advisory, but it forwards it back to the admin committee for consideration of the transfer.
Yeah. Okay. Everybody understand? So if everybody understands.
Well, maybe, I don't want, the 100% will go forward, but the contingency fund transfer to the other libraries is ultimately up to the admin committee.
So if everybody's ready to vote, there's no will vote. Now. Get this off the table. so 15 yeses, 2 noes, so that passes. So we move forward. It's gonna. Thank you. We'll move on to number 9, which is a resolution amending rules and bylaws of the Board of Supervisors of St. Croix County. Do I have a motion to approve? Supervisor Keister's motion. Do I have a second? Seconded by Supervisor Novotny. Discussion. Supervisor Peterson.
I would like to make a motion to amend the section on Article 4 under number 2, elected, paragraph subparent A there. And concerning the population of electing standing committees, I would like to change that wording from in alphabetical order in agreement with Citizen Norton Bauman's statement that we populate the standing committees in a random order by drawing the standing committees out of a hat each election, and that would determine the order in which they're populated. My reasoning being that it would be a more transparent process and would somewhat hopefully discourage maybe an orchestrated election.
I have a motion. Do I have a second? Seconded by Bill Peavy. Any discussion? Supervisor Babbitt.
Supervisor Peterson, just a quick question. As I understand it, the kind of random picking of committees is what you're talking about, not the random assignment of board members to committees, but the order with which the committee appointments are scheduled, essentially? Okay, thank you.
Supervisor Nelson.
How would it make it more transparent? I don't understand that. What would you say, Mr. Pearson, what would be more transparent than have alphabetical?
I guess my question would be what would be less transparent, and the random selection has worked for many, many years without any problems that I'm aware of.
Supervisor Keesler.
So has the last order of alphabetizing it. So, I mean, there's some illusion that there was some secret meeting that somehow orchestrated the current committees. I don't know of any secret meeting that took place, but outside of that, let's say there was a secret, somehow a secret meeting that took place or that takes place in the future and says, well, I'd like to be on admin. And so when that comes up in random order or in alphabetical, that's what I'd like to sit on. I don't see, number one, how it's any more transparent, and I don't see how it precludes any talking amongst folks, as long as it's not a walking quorum, that I would like to be on this committee, you'd like to be on that committee. And that's what happens anyway when we write up what we are, why we should be on committees. So there's some illusion that somehow randomizing it makes it fairer or whatever. I'm failing to see that. But anyway, I would not vote in favor of this because I don't think something as important as being elected to committees should be left to, you know, roulette or some other random assignment. From my standpoint, it is very transparent to say this is what we're going to do first, this is what we're going to do second, that's what we're going to do third. And folks that want to sit on committees should then voice their opinion through the survey that goes out from Cindy every year.
Discussion, questions? No other discussion, questions? This is an amendment to the bylaws to have a drawing of the committees. If everybody understands that, we can vote at this time. We have a motion and a second. I don't think here. And the amendment failed. So we'll move on to the resolution. Is there any further discussion on the resolution as presented on the floor? If there isn't, Bill, Supervisor Peavy.
Yeah, I just had a question, and I don't know why what was the reasoning for changing the times for, and I can't find it quickly, but I think it was May or March, back to evening meetings. I know from when you gotta drive 30 miles and the meeting gets over in the dark, older people aren't gonna come. Under the previous, and I'm sorry, I can't find it right now. Under the previous rules, we had 6 in the evening and 6 in the morning, and that seemed to work when we had the summer hours. And I just wondering why it felt that it should be changed back to the evening meetings in March and I think it was October, but I can't find it quick offhand. And I'm making a motion. I'm just curious why it was felt that we should change that. Thank you.
Supervisor Schoberg.
Well, today is March, and we're meeting during the day, and I'm supposed to be at my law firm all day long. So there's one reason.
Any other discussion? No. If there's no further discussion, there's a motion and a second on the floor. Okay. We'll vote. Two noes and the rest yes. Thank you. Our last action item today is a resolution approving the 2016 budget amendment allowing for the transfer of funds from the undesignated fund balance and the jail improvement fund balance to fund up to the maximum of $1.44 million of 2016 CIP, and in addition, establish a cap on the drawdown of the $5 million state trust fund loan. Do I need a motion? Supervisor Navant needs a motion. Second by? No second? Okay, second. Supervisor Schoberg. Any discussion? Supervisor Cook.
I had some concerns about this resolution the last time we talked about it at the board meeting, and I understand and appreciate the desire to minimize the debt for the county and limiting the $5 million the $5 million state trust fund loan, the amount that we would take from that loan. And I also recognize that concern that we may have too much money in the fund balance, or we don't want to be hoarding money from our taxpayers. But I think based on the conversations that I've had with Administrator Thompson and with Bob and with other supervisors and some of my constituents, I think artificially limiting the amount that we are taking from the trust fund loan and simply deciding to take it out of the fund balance at this point in the year is a little premature. We just recently changed our policy for the undesignated fund balance because of some discussions about that. We have a list of projects here that I think, I mean, we can have had conversations about the prioritization and value of those projects. I think you can argue that all of these projects are important for the county, and I don't think that is necessarily the discussion that we would have right now, because we will be coming back to allocating those funds. But these projects' costs are estimates right now. So we are basically saying we're only going to take this much money out of the trust fund loan and spend the rest out of undesignated fund balance, not knowing what the actual amount is going to be. We know these are just estimates. And we also know that we can, per discussion at the last board meeting, that we have the option to pay back the loan ahead of time without any penalty. So we have the opportunity, should we decide to take the $5 million up front, go back, look at all these projects, find out what the actual cost is of the projects, to know what we may want to take out of our undesignated fund balance. We have the option to take the money, pay it back ahead to make early payments potentially out of that undesignated fund balance ahead of time to, again, minimize the interest that we are accruing for that loan. So I'm not sure exactly how this would, based on the wording of the resolution, I'm not exactly sure how this would work, but I would like to propose an amendment that we eliminate the cap on the drawdown of the $5 million for the trust fund loan, and with the intention that should the fund balance towards the end of the year, and when we have a better understanding of what the costs of these projects are, allow us to make early payments to the trust fund, then we would do so at that time.
Do I have a second? Okay, Supervisor Berkey seconds. Now it's open for discussion, the amendment. Supervisor Osnes.
I've got a question for Bob. I don't know if this is going to relate to you or not. As you're coming up, Bob, my question would be, I think we had close to $1 million carryover from 2015. Is that correct, on our capital projects?
Oh, yes, there are carry forwards from the 2015.
Are any of those projects from 2015, could we put some of those off for another year or two and use some of that fund money to offset some of the unassigned balance funds? Seems to me that would be a cost savings as well.
I don't know right offhand how many of them are actually in process. The largest one on there is the ERP. That was $500,000, and that is in process. At this point, we've committed just over $100,000 to the consulting firm, the GFOA. So I'm not sure that we can, that what in there could be postponed. Could check and get back to you, but.
I appreciate that.
Any other questions? Discussions on the amendment?
May I have the motion repeated, please?
Sure. So my motion would be to amend the resolution to eliminate the cap on the drawdown of the $5 million state trust fund loan, and then direct, well, I guess it would be brought back to the board, or direct staff to look at the undesignated fund balance at some point later in the year when we have a better understanding of the costs of the projects, and make payments if the current financial situation is positive, to make payments to the trust fund loan before the end of the year, up to the amount that's listed in the current resolution.
Everybody, Supervisor
I just, for clarification or what might be helpful, I don't know if others bring their materials from previous meetings, but at our January 20th meeting, the resolution approving the application for the state trust fund in the amount of $5 million, actually delineates all of the various proposed expenditures, and it's quite tidy. And I know we had some additional discussion at that time, and also in administration, that we were directing staff to utilize this suggested plan for projects that, many of them being KIP projects. And I I also don't like the idea of deciding at this time in March that we're going to spend down a large portion of our fund balance. We had an issue come up already with respect to the library funding to use the undesignated fund, which I believe is the fund balance. So there are things that come up, and again, we're in March. So in support of the motion that Supervisor Cook has made, I would ask for my fellow board members to vote yes on the amendment. Thank you.
Discussion, Supervisor Kiesler?
I'd just like to make a clarification that the library fund that we would be looking at is on the contingency fund, which is a special fund, not the general fund. So those are two different pots of money. Thank you.
Thank you for the clarification.
Supervisor Novotny?
We put a cap on this, but couldn't we at a subsequent meeting remove the cap if we needed to? We've got the money available. It's like having a bank account and you're budgeting this amount, but if a rainy day comes, you can take out more.
Supervisor Cook?
It's my understanding from talking to Bob that we have a limited time period to withdraw the money from the trust fund. Isn't it April or 4 months or something like that? Yeah, 4 months.
Yes, 4 months, just 4 months drawdown.
Okay.
Supervisor Brinkman?
Again, I go back to the spirit of capping this at $3.7 million is the interest that is saved by the taxpayers of our county. I will also make mention that at the admin committee, I did say that as long as I was on this board, and I will repeat it here, as long as I'm on this board, every single dollar that we can have Bob rat hole away, I'd like to see to pay this down as quickly as possible. If something major comes up, we would certainly know within the 4 months, I do believe, because as Bob Mitted instructed, they have sent out proposals, correct? They are. He has allowed I know the Sheriff's Department to submit proposals for those things. So we have 4 months if we need to go back at that. I also would like to make mention that at the admin committee meeting, the admin committee did vote in favor of this proposal, the original proposal, I should say, by a 3-2 vote. And at that time, Administrator Thompson did support it as saying that administration would support it. So that's all I have.
Supervisor Ring?
So I just have a question of clarification. We still, for 4 months, can change the cap if need be at the end of 4 months and still have access to the loan, the trust fund loan. Is that correct?
Correct.
Yes, at this point, the loan that we're requesting is still $5 million, and we'll have a 4-month drawdown for it. So the cap that's being proposed is internal, if you will.
Supervisor Novotny?
Mr. Minute, when does the clock start?
I believe it starts today. The loan is in front of the State Trust Fund's board today for approval.
So we have 4 months from today.
I believe so, yes.
Okay.
Any other discussion? No other discussion? This is on the amendment. Take the cap off. So we have a motion and a second to amend. Jill sec. Okay. If there's no further questions, we'll vote. amendment failed. So we're back to the original resolution. And we have a motion to second on that. And this also, I believe, takes a 2/3 vote, so that would be 12 people, correct? So if there's no discussion, questions, Supervisor Babbitt.
I was holding my comments till we got back to the original resolution, assuming that we did. My understanding is that as Finance Director Midditt just pointed out, we are requesting a loan of $5 million. The board has previously said we would only like, ideally, to spend 3.7, and we had a fairly extensive discussion about that. Obviously, if we spend 3.7, we still have roughly 1.3 available to us. So I'm not sure I understand completely why we need the additional 1.4 voted on at this time. That's kind of my first point. The second one is that, and maybe this is just me, I certainly could have missed it, but I haven't yet to date heard a discussion about the other items in the KIP that I'm seeing as optional to some extent. That may not be the right word, but as I reviewed the list and looked at, for example, an IT storage shelf for $50,000, obviously I went, that's a lot of money for a storage shelf. It may be that it's entirely justifiable. My point isn't that this is not an item we should vote on, but I don't have a clear sense about what it is, why we need it. So from my perspective, we need a little more of an opportunity to understand what these other items are that would be part of the 1.3 or 1.4 that we're talking about this morning. I have no problem with funding these items. I personally just haven't had an opportunity to really understand exactly where they fit and why they're on our list. We haven't really had a priorities discussion, at least to my knowledge. So wanted to make that point.
Any other discussion?
Could I
Yes,
ask a
Supervisor
question for
Berkey?
clarification? If we vote no on this, if this failed, then where are we? Or do we back up and we have already approved 5 million? Did we already approve 5 million from the state trust fund?
Yes.
We did. Okay. I also secondarily wanted to comment regarding the question of these other items. We have had some probably fairly extensive discussion in administration, but I wanted to point out to Chris that the $200,000 being requested from the community development is for a flagship park, Glen Hills, and many of you have heard this before. However, that park facility does not have flush toilets, does not have adequate changing stations, and the $200,000 is indeed to move forward and bring this park up to standards. And that's my baby, and I wanted to mention it one more time. Thank you.
Supervisor Babbitt?
And with all due respect, Supervisor Berkey, my point is not that any of these items are unnecessary or that we should vote them down, but that speaking for myself, I don't have a clear sense, with the exception of yours, why the money is necessary and what the projects are about. And I'm just asking for a little bit more of an opportunity to understand what they are for and why they're on the list, essentially.
Maybe. Yeah. Supervisor Akhtarov.
Oh, this is maybe out of order, but I would love to see, just like we have a meeting on the fund balance, on the budget, I would like to see a meeting on the capital improvement plan. So when this is brought forward, these things are explained to us so that we know what we're voting on down the road. I mean, this is new. The capital improvement plan is new, but I don't think our meeting plans have adjusted yet so that we are adequately informed about what it is and why it's needed and the priorities and so forth. I don't think it'd be on here if it wasn't important, but just so all of us board members have a better understanding.
Yeah, we certainly could have a, you know, a separate budget discussion on the CIP, but I will remind board members that we do have a written budget, a separate budget for the CIP, and each and every one of these projects had written justification for each and every one of them. So let's go back and reread some of the 5-year CIP document, which has a project description for each and every one. But having said that, I think more discussion of the CIP will be incorporated into our budget meetings in the future. There was one other point. I just wanted to clarify that each of these projects has been fully vetted, and there's a capital improvement review team. And so it's not that these projects just showed up. They've been long in the making, and they have been justified, and the administration did prioritize these projects and brought forward CIP and presented it to the board, and the board approved a $5 million state trust fund loan application, which has been submitted. And subsequent to that, there was some discussion about limiting the drawdown and presenting the resolution that's before you that would have limited the drawdown to 3.7 approximately, and then transferring the remaining 1.4 from the fund balance. That's why it requires the 2/3 vote today, is to actually activate the transfer of those dollars from the undesignated fund balance to fund the remaining portion of the CIP, because by taking action on this resolution, you will be directing the administration to limit the drawdown to 3.7, and you will be transferring the remaining 1.4 to make up the $5 million CIP. So that's where we stand as of today.
Supervisor Nelson.
And we also, we've had some good news as far as that public protection, is that we're going under budget with some of the programs. So hopefully won't need all the money, and we can kind of allocate it to other things also. I know it kind of sounds, and Andy said it before, as the public protection $3.7 million loan. But that was one of the biggest needs in the county so far, was the 911 infrastructure and things like that. And it's emergency services is expensive. But also Steve DeKotch and them have been doing a very good job to do best bang for the buck, to make sure we're not going cheap, but we're doing it right. And hopefully the number will be a lot lower, and we can still use some of that money for the other programs too. And I really want Jill to get her bathrooms. I honestly do, because I'm all for it.
Supervisor Cook.
Okay, just to clarify one more time, if we defeat this resolution, the trust fund loan is already in process, so we will still have the $5 million to fund the CIP, all the projects on the CIP. All right, thank you.
Supervisor Schoberg.
The thing that's irreversible today is that once we transfer the $1.444 million from the undesignated fund to the CIP account, we don't transfer that back. So your motion to stop that, which was defeated, that now will take place. So we are agreeing, all of us, even though we are hesitant to do so, but still we have enough assurances that it's an okay amount. We're all now agreeing to transfer that amount out of the undesignated fund. And we specifically agreed to that when we defeated her amendment.
Supervisor Keesler.
And just to reiterate that, yes, if this is defeated, there is $5 million, and you are then committing the taxpayers to an additional $250,000 in interest fees. That's my concern, right there. So I will go back to the many discussions that we had at admin, one of which we asked Mr. Thompson, does administration support this? And he said yes. So I would ask you again today, do you support this, or have you changed your mind since the last admin meeting?
No, I support the resolution. Was it the original preferred methodology? No, it was not what I originally recommended. But to reach a consensus and compromise, I do support the resolution as presented. Was it the original recommendation from administration? No. Yep.
Supervisor Osnes.
Pat, I've got a question for you then, too. If we take the $5 million and we spend the 3.7 and we come up with the 144 out of undesignated funds, and we don't do anything else with the remainder of the $5 million, can that balance eventually go back into the undesignated funds and pay back what we've taken out of there?
We have to ask Bob that.
I'm not real clear on the question. We can always repay the loan. We can make payments on the $5 million in advance. And so if there are available fund balance dollars in the future that we want to reallocate towards debt payments, we certainly, you as a board certainly have that prerogative. So wasn't real clear on your question, but.
Supervisor Babbitt.
Again, just briefly, and I apologize if I'm bringing up something that has already been made clear to others. We're borrowing $5 million, we are using 3.7, that leaves 1.3 of unused loan funds sitting there. Why do we need to take 1.44 out of the unassigned fund balance to begin with, since we have 1.3 loan money sitting there at our discretion? I guess that's my question.
The resolution that's before you contemplates only utilizing $3.77 million from the state trust fund loan, which we had applied for 5 based on the board's prior action. This resolution will limit the use of that $5 million to 3.77. It also, in addition to that, makes a transfer of $1.4 million to fund the remaining portion of the CIP. That portion that would not be funded with the state trust fund loan. Does that help?
Supervisor Keesler.
Just real quick. By limiting the drawdown and using available funds, we save roughly $250,000 in interest. That's really what it's all about. It's not defunding any of the projects. The bathrooms still get built. Everyone gets to enjoy flush toilets. And I think that's awesome. But what we're arguing about is, what do we do? Do we sit on a fat wallet, or do we use available funds to alleviate the interest that the taxpayers are going to feel at some point? We're talking about $50,000 for the library. This saves 5 times that in interest. To me, I think it's something that we need to contemplate. I think it's a good compromise, and I think it gets us to where we need to be down the road.
Supervisor Akhtarov.
One of my concerns is if we draw down the fund balance, and if we have to borrow a large amount within the next few years, the interest will go up, and the amount of money that we would have to pay for the higher interest may well be much more than $250,000. We have to think of future as well as just now, and that's my concern about drawing the fund balance down so much.
Supervisor Brinkman.
How do you know the interest rate's going to go up?
You don't know what they're going to do, but I would like to protect ourselves and, and have the availability for a year because we may find a lot more in a year. I mean, that doesn't mean that we can't use it all, and like it was said earlier, pay back some of that $5 million earlier, which would bring down the interest rate from 250. But to close our options off by limiting us, to me, is kind of scary and makes the future look hesitant or questionable.
And I think that it gives us more options in the future. A smaller loan amount, we're going to save that much money in interest. If we want to prepay it, we're prepaying on a smaller amount, so that goes 100% towards principal, so that would knock down the interest even more. For that matter, if 5 years from now we need to borrow more money, we may get a better interest rate. We could roll this loan into the next loan to finish paying it off. I think that this makes fiscal sense to the taxpayers of this county.
Supervisor Hanson, you had something?
Yeah, I was going to say what Andy just said. Let's vote this thing on and save some money on interest. The speculation that we're going to hurt our bond rating is just that, speculation. It is a fact that we'll save money on interest if we take this course of action and spend down our reserve fund.
Okay. Supervisor Cook?
I would argue that defeating this resolution would not be simply sitting on a fat wallet or budget. A CIP is a long-term range planning tool. Yeah. If we have the opportunity to pay back the money if we take the $5 million loan, as we see our financial climate in a positive note. We, as a county government, we are required to provide services. There are unknowns that we don't know what that could come up in the next few years. And this is an opportunity for us to conservatively look at this, look at the options we have for funding for a CIP of valuable projects. And as the situation progresses throughout the year, and if we have a safe environment where we still have a good undesignated, healthy undesignated fund balance, we can pay the money back.
Supervisor Brinkman?
I would just say that both ways we can pay money back, and the initial savings of interest is there under my proposal.
Any other discussion? Any other questions? If there's no discussion, no questions, it's time to vote.
His idea.
What?
His idea. That's our vote.
Well, this takes a 2/3 vote. 3 noes, 15 yeses, so it passes with a 2/3 vote, so we're okay. Thank you, everyone. We're open for a request for future agenda items. No agenda items, okay. We'll have the county clerk's report.
I have no correspondence or rezoning, but I just want to remind you that the next meeting is the third Tuesday, the county board meeting, third Tuesday in April. It's the organizational meeting, 5 p.m., as it's stated on the agenda. The election is April 5th. It's the first Tuesday. I have tentatively working on setting up an orientation for the county board. I'm looking at the second week in April, either the 13th or 14th, but I'll be working with Pat Thompson on that and setting an agenda, and it will be based on the survey results that Supervisor Octoroff initiated for orientation. And that's all I have.
Thank you. I have a little announcement here, a recognition of Supervisor Schottner and Kibler. They've been on the board. They're not going to come back, it sounds like, next year for elections. So they've been on since 2012. So we appreciate all the work they've done. So thank you. And with that, does anybody else have any announcements? Supervisor Ring.
Yes, I would like to hand out something from the St. Croix Valley Family Resource Center. They have a big event, Reach for the Stars, on Sunday, April 24th. This agency, which serves children or families of children 0 to 6 in 3 counties, has a fundraiser that night, and I would just like to welcome anyone. I would like to see representation from each of the counties if you could come. So look for Reach the Stars if you're interested. Just let me know, and it'd be nice to show support. There is no government funding allocated to this program. So thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? I don't see anything else. Thank you, everyone. Our meeting is adjourned.